In many debates you'll encounter, it's necessary to talk about the Canadian government and understand how it works. For younger debaters especially, it can be easy to make mistakes about what governments do. In this video, we'll be looking at the very basics of Canadian government by breaking down the different levels, what they're in charge of, how they get elected, and how all of this affects debate. Let's get started. Canada has 3 levels of government: federal, the people in charge of the whole country; provincial, the people in charge of a province; and municipal, the people in charge of a city or town. Each level of government is elected separately and is in charge of slightly different things. The federal government is led by the Prime Minister. It includes the House of Commons, who mostly debate issues and propose legislation, and the Senate, who mostly reviews legislation and investigates national issues. The people who sit in the House of Commons are called Members of Parliament, or MPs for short. They're elected every 4 to 5 years. The people in the Senate are called senators, and they're appointed by the government and can stay until they're 75. The federal government is in charge of anything that affects all of Canada or multiple provinces at once. For example, national defense, immigration, citizenship, and currency. Things that affect big chunks of the country or the whole country at once. The provincial government is led by the Premier and is made up of the provincial legislature. Representatives at the provincial level are called MLAs in Saskatchewan, but they have different names across Canada. Provincial governments are in charge of things that affect the whole province, like education, healthcare, highways, and more. The municipal government is led by the mayor and is made up of elected councillors. They deal with problems relating to the city, like road maintenance or bike lanes. All of these forms of government have to pass bills. A bill is a law that hasn't been made official yet, and in each of the governments they debate the bills and then vote to put them in place or not. So, how is this information important to debate? Well, in debate you need to propose who is making what change when you see a motion. For example, if you're debating the topic, "This House would ban private schools," who would you set as this House? Not the federal government, because they aren't in charge of education. You'd need to pick a provincial government. Similarly, any topic about refugees, citizens, or defense should likely always be the federal government. The second big thing to know about the Canadian government is that Canada is huge. It's 5 times bigger than Mexico and 18 times bigger than France. This means our provinces have a lot of diversity in terms of economics, geography, and values. For example, provinces that rely on resource extraction, like Alberta and Saskatchewan, end up having conflict with provinces like BC because our governments disagree on environmental policy. There are also cultural differences. Because of Quebec's French background and distinct culture, it tends to disagree with the rest of Canada frequently about laws and policies. When it comes to debate, all of these issues boil down to representation. Representation in government happens because we can't each vote or decide on every law that gets passed, so instead we elect people to make choices for us. This means that we want people who make decisions that we think are right and will protect our personal interests. That's why representation in Canada is hard. There's so many different groups and opinions that it becomes impossible to represent everyone, a common topic that comes up in debate. So to recap, there are 3 levels of the Canadian government, and each level has its own jobs and responsibilities. So when you're deciding which person you're talking about when you say this House, you need to figure out who at what level is responsible. Second, the different areas of Canada are diverse, and different provinces have different wants and needs. Is a motion going to cause conflict between a few different provinces? Thirdly, representation is complicated. It's hard to elect someone who will represent every part of you, especially if your group is not well represented in Canadian politics. And there you have it, the basics of Canadian government. To learn more about different debate topics and skills, check out the rest of our YouTube videos or head over to our website at saskdebate.com.